Hi, it's Carly McAvoy. I want to explain p-values and show you how we can use a p-value to make a decision about a claim. A p-value is the probability of getting a value of a test statistic that is at least as extreme as the test statistic obtained from the sample data, assuming that the null hypothesis is true. We make a decision by comparing the p-value to the significance level. In general, if you are testing a claim against the null, you want a low p-value. An example, at the end of our hypothesis test, we find a p-value of 0.003, and we are working with a significance level of 0.05. Since the p-value is less than the significance level, we reject the null hypothesis. And here's the little thing to help you remember this. If the p is low, the null must go. That is, we reject the null hypothesis. If the p is high, the null will fly. That is, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. In a previous video, I took these claims and I had you write null and alternative hypothesis for those. In this video, we go a step further and we say, well, what if the p-value was this? What would we say about our claim? And we we reject or fail to reject, and then we state a conclusion about it. And this can be a little tricky. So it's a really good video to pay attention to, pay close attention to. You need practice at this. Believe me, I had to practice this. I think you'll need to. So for the 5 scenarios below, use the significance level of alpha is 0.05 to decide if you should reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis, and then restate your answer. So we looked at this before. The owner claims the average age in the club is equal to 25. This is his claim in symbolic form. And also assume that we get a p-value of 0.0075. So here's the claim. Now here's the thing to remember from the previous video. If your claim has an equal to part in it, then it is our null hypothesis. So the claim is the null hypothesis, and then we want to say something opposite of that for the alternative hypothesis, which does not equal. Okay, that means we have a two-tailed test too, by the way. Okay, since the p-value is less than 0.05, it's way less than 0.05, we say that it is low and the null must go. Therefore, we reject the null hypothesis. And the null hypothesis in this example was our claim. So we would word our conclusion this way. There is sufficient evidence to warrant rejection of the claim that the mean age is in the club is 25. The claim is the mean age is 25. And we have sufficient evidence to warrant rejection of that. We're rejecting the claim because we rejected the null, and the null was the claim in this problem. All right, and that wording is going to come up. You're going to see it. It's important to think about that. You're welcome to shut the video off and think about that for a minute and make sure it goes in deep into your brain. And then maybe don't look at the answer down here and see if you can say what the answer would be by this one. So this one, the police claim that more than half of all drivers have driven while intoxicated. So more than half is a thing you hear a lot in statistics, and that just means that greater than 0.5. Assume the p-value is 0.1575. Now in this case, the claim did not have an equality part to it. So that is our alternative hypothesis. Since that's going to the right, the null hypothesis is going to the left. But in this particular textbook, the convention is to just use equal. So we're not showing the less than part. But this is just kind of helpful for you to see the arrows go in opposite directions. Okay, the p-value is greater than 0.05. So we say it's high and the null will fly. In other words, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. Now, in this case, though, the hypothesis, the claim was the alternative hypothesis. So we would say there is not sufficient evidence to support the claim that more than half of all drivers have driven while intoxicated. We're not supporting the claim because we failed to reject the null hypothesis. We failed to reject the null. In other words, we kind of believe in the null. So we don't believe in the claim, which is what the claim was the alternative hypothesis. We failed to reject the null, so we cannot say that we support the alternative. Okay, the wording is just awkward. That's why you have to think about it. Okay, the governor claimed that the mean amount of assistance was less than $356 a month. And so here's the claim in symbolic form. Assume the p-value is 0.0412. So in this case, again, the claim did not have an equality piece to it, so that is our alternative hypothesis. So we can see that the p-value is less than 0.05. Therefore, it is low, and the null must go, and we reject the null hypothesis. In this case, we're rejecting the null, which means we find that there is evidence to support the claim. There is sufficient evidence to support the claim that the mean amount of assistance is less than $356 a month. We rejected the null hypothesis, but that was not our claim. Our claim was the alternative. Rejected the null, then we support the claim. Okay, and finally, we claim the proportion of intoxicated drivers on the road is no more than 37%. Well, no more than is a less than equal to. So that does contain the equality. That makes that claim our null hypothesis. And so the p-value I have here is 0.2571. So that means that it is higher than our significance level of 0.05. We say it's high, the null will fly. We fail to reject the null. In this case, the null was our claim. Our claim and the null are one and the same. We failed to reject it. That is, there is not sufficient evidence to warrant the rejection of the claim. So that's confusing. Say it again. There's no sufficient evidence to warrant the rejection of the claim. We don't say we support the claim when it's a null. The null can either be reject or fail to reject. So we're saying there's no evidence to warrant us to reject that claim. That's how it is. I don't make up the rules. Okay, have a great day. Subscribe if you'd like to see more of my videos, and I'll talk to you next time.